episode of Roll or Die. We've been to most places around Australia with our guests, but one place that we haven't been is the capital of Australia. And so we thought, who better to have as the representation of Canberra than the head coach of one of the biggest and some say best clubs in Canberra, the head coach of Elements MMA, also
Elements
known as
Fitness.
Atos. Atos, is it?
Yep, Atos Canberra.
Atos Canberra, Ben Langford. Thanks for joining us, Ben.
Thanks for having me, guys. How are you both?
Yeah, really
Good, very well.
And we wouldn't have been sitting here talking to you unless it was the amazing Lauren Thompson, I think, the recently married.
Yes, very recently married.
Yeah. Were you at the wedding?
No, I was over in Adelaide. It was still pre-COVID related travel restrictions for everyone. So okay. I think she was keeping it pretty small on purpose. I saw that Liv made it across.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So Lauren used to train with us in Melbourne, and when she went up to Canberra, I guess she did a bit of research and tried a few gyms, and she's found her home there with you guys there. And tell us about your gym.
So we're based in the center of the city. We're one of the few gyms in Australia associated with Atos. These days, we're probably one of the largest gyms in Canberra, and we have, in addition to a very large student base, then we just promoted 2 more black belts. So I think this brings us to 13 black belts overall, regularly rolling on the mats.
Wow.
And in addition to jiu-jitsu, we have judo, wrestling, boxing, MMA, weightlifting. So we're pretty well set up when it comes to training for jiu-jitsu and associated grappling arts.
Yeah, I know whenever I ask anybody who's traveled to Canberra where they've gone to train, nearly always they'll say they train at yours, and always very positive feedback. What is it, do you think, about your gym that makes it so good?
Well, from day one, we sort of built it deliberately with culture in mind. So we sort of set out to build the kind of culture that I would want to train at. So something that was welcoming, but had a big focus on skill development and actually improving not just myself, but everyone on the mats together. And I think because of having that deliberate intention right from the beginning, it's allowed us to really set up this kind of gym culture that is now welcoming and self-reinforcing. And it doesn't matter if I'm there or not. I know that everyone on the mat is a fantastic person, and that anyone coming to join us gets the vibe of who we are straight away. So we don't even have to say to people, hey, maybe you should train somewhere else. They can feel, hey, this isn't the kind of place I really want to be at.
Yeah.
Yes, I really want to be here. So it just selects out very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic way for training together and improving.
That's awesome. And what about like comp results? Do you find that your culture kind of breeds a good environment for competitors, or is it more social rolling, or is it a mixture? Like, what have you got in there?
It's a pretty solid mixture. So the style of we focus primarily on teaching fundamentals across the board, but having lots and lots of time to focus on situational rolling, positional rolling with particular outcomes in mind. So we find that people get lots and lots of mat time working on positions that they might necessarily achieve in a normal role, which is fantastic for upping the skill level of everyone in the room. It also lets everyone develop their own style and game and purpose for jiu-jitsu. It's not up to me to decide what someone wants to do with their jiu-jitsu, whether they want to be a competitor or social roller or interested in self-defense or fitness. I'm there to teach jiu-jitsu and provide this facility and these means to get as good as you can, and then you can take it where you want to take it. Wow. So these days we have some very established competitors. We have a number of competitors getting ready for ADCC trials right now. But we've been on Subversion and a few of the other major professional grappling platforms. So we're very lucky to have an excellent mix and have everyone still be able to interact across the board. Whether you're big time competitor or brand new, everyone still gets to roll together.
That's awesome.
So what you were saying before, that's like specific training. I know me, myself, like I really discovered the benefits of that somewhere around sort of blue or purple belt. And is that the sort of thing you're talking about when you're talking about positional sparring, or?
Yeah, so
slightly different.
I mean, everyone loves to roll, and rolling is great fun. and it should really be a part of every class, but it shouldn't necessarily be the majority of every class if you're interested in getting as good as you can, as quick as you can. So we spend a lot of time doing like rolling like games in particular positions, or maybe just looking for a particular outcome. So it could be anywhere from score a point, get a sub from mount, get the back, stay on the back, whatever we're sort of working on that day. We have a lot of games built around that.
Yeah.
Rather than showing something from back control and just hoping that you happen to get to back control in that class, we guarantee you'll get the back control and get some time spending there against a resisting opponent. And then we'll find a way to go back and integrate it into the total rolling game, so it's not completely disconnected either.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
What about your journey in jiu-jitsu? Like, how did you discover jiu-jitsu? Most people, it's the UFC. It seems to be this common thing.
Yeah, well, back when I started in, I think it was 2004 or something like that. I've been doing martial arts for a few years since I was 10, karate and that kind of stuff. And that at least put me in a position to find out what the UFC was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, went and got a VHS from Video Easy
Yeah.
for UFC 1 and watched that. And I was very impressed and pulled out the White Pages phone book and looked up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There was a single entry in there. And
Where were you living at the time? Was that in Canberra as well?
That was in Canberra. So at the time, the highest ranked practitioner in Canberra was a blue belt called Michael McGee. So we all started together, as a bunch of white belts led by a blue belt, and we kind of just grew from there. But yeah, very different environment to what people get these days.
Awesome. So 2004, so pretty much 18 years. Wow.
Yeah. I think I'm on 16 or 17 years. I foolishly did not keep track of the dates of belts or when I started exactly.
Wow. So you're an OG. Like, you're probably one of the longest jiu-jitsu, whatever you are, whatever the name is, in Canberra. You've been doing jiu-jitsu one of the longest.
Yeah, I'll be one of the longest in Canberra.
Yeah.
So there's a few of us still kicking around from that generation in Canberra, which is really nice. But yeah, there was a small group, and we didn't know very much, so we just kept doing those few things over and over again. And
was it sort of like in someone's garage almost, sort of thing, or just a little bit bigger?
It was in the back room of a basement gym, in one of the suburbs, with like terrible old mats and no air conditioning or anything like that. It was
very Fight Club-esque by the sound of it.
And we and we trained like idiots as well. Like, we weren't rolling to improve. We were just fighting each other and getting hurt.
It was the UFC era. Come on. Man.
Yeah, it was.
Back when
before the YouTube.
No rules.
Yeah, and before YouTube, so if we had a problem, we either had to work it out or pool our money to send someone off to Sydney or Melbourne to ask one of the few black belts in the country the question.
You did that? You pooled your money to send people places?
Yeah, so they'd go, I'm going to go to Sydney, and so we'd all chip in for him to get a private, say Anthony Lange, and we'd have like a few questions that we just couldn't work out the answer to. So part of their private had to be answering those questions, and they'd come back and show us.
That's a lot of pressure. Like, if you sent me to get that private, I'd come back with a couple of the details and have forgotten the rest. Not bad, man.
No comment, Anton.
That's me. Wow.
So do you think, like, I only started in a little bit later than you. I started in 2009, and it was, I think, even from when you started to when I started, and I was in Melbourne, was a little bit different. But I know myself, sometimes I'll even say, especially to the girls, like, you're so lucky now to have this one amount of people that you can roll with, like other high ranked females, but even just the amount of ability you have to go to YouTube and look something up or whatever. How do you think that affected your development of jiu-jitsu at the very start? Like, do you think, how would that compare to, like, say, someone starting now? I know in our club, for instance, they get introductory classes and they have very much their hand held through the start of those first few, especially 6 months of jiu-jitsu, is quite overwhelming. How do you think it compares to how you guys had to do it when you started?
It's very different. It's definitely better now in every respect. The training is safer, which means you can train more often, which means you get better.
Yep.
The level of knowledge on the mats is greater. But also like there's introduction classes, and you want beginners to stay around. Whereas, as bad as it sounds, like when we had a beginner's class, that wasn't a new training partner, that was a target. Like I was the target for the first year I was training because I was quite small compared to everyone else. And either you just were lucky and didn't get hurt and kind of stuck it out, or you were sensible and went, "Why am I doing this?" and sensibly went and did something else where 95 kilo men weren't beating you up. Like,
yes. Yeah.
Well, you kind of opened a can of worms before for me. Like when you started talking about it was like I've actually forgotten, but you're talking about something that you regretted basically earlier on in the show. Like what was it? I've lost.
Come on, Anton. We're only 15 minutes in here. 10 minutes
I know.
in. This is our time of
you get
kicking
the
in.
details. Anyway, I lost that. But what I was wondering, it made me think, like, is there on your journey? It's a question we've never really asked a guest before, and I don't want to make the show go dark. But do you have any like BJJ regrets? Do you have anything that you would tell your past self to do differently at this point? Because you've obviously been around for a long time and you've been through a lot of the evolution of the sport. But do you have any BJJ regrets?
I mean, a lot of my regrets aren't too much of things I had huge amounts of control over, but especially in those early days, like they were a great bunch of people, but like I said, we weren't training to help each other out or really improve. And so as a result, we lost a lot of like potentially really great training partners, like people who could have been brilliant or made me better or them better or other training people. So like we lost a lot of people along the way through no fault of their own, just because, and we really didn't know any better.
Yeah.
But, when you have those big pools of people to draw on, that's all these different body types and personalities and talents, and you limit yourself when you limit who's coming into the gym in that way. And that affects the whole gym. So that's one of the big regrets with like those early days where, it was really just a tough man contest to a certain degree.
I love that, man. That's so insightful. Absolutely. Like if they didn't look and smell like an MMA fighter, or the be, then they were ostracized basically, and then you lost that type of training partner.
Exactly. Like, and I was on the receiving end of that ostracism. I wasn't ostracized isn't the right word, but because socially they weren't kept out. It was just a fight. It wasn't training. There's that big difference between the two. And if you were a littler guy, and I mean, let alone trying to be a woman in that environment, like, but if you were just a smaller guy in that environment, it was tough because you were just a target. And there were some bullies in that environment as well, but for the most part, it wasn't bullying behavior. It was just that was the culture of that club. And we as a group didn't really know what we were doing in the creation of that culture or how to change it. And that sort of changed in Canberra over time.
And hence why I guess you created a club of the kind of culture that your club has now, because that's like, it's all about being inclusive and allowing people to train how they want to train and all that.
That's a big part of it. I think one of the other major differences is like I'm a professional coach first and jiu-jitsu second. So I came in with the knowledge of how to create a place that's better at upskilling people and making a nice training environment and an effective training environment, as opposed to 95% of martial arts instructors, which were, you've done martial arts for X amount of time, and your option is either stop training or become a coach.
Or the technician becomes the manager or whatever, but they don't have skills.
And how did you find yourself aligned with Atos? How did that come about? Tell us about so is elements like the MMA sort of thing, and then Atos is the jiu-jitsu side of it? How How does it work?
Well, so like the gym itself is Elements Fitness and Martial Arts.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of jiu-jitsu, I guess Atos is our overarching brand.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that you've got, say, Will Machado as the overarching brand, say Dominance.
Yep.
So it's Atos, and our school itself is Elements Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so shortly after becoming a black belt, we were sort of looking to align ourselves with a team that suited our culture and our approach to training. And I'd been reaching out to a few different teams at the time. And when I got in contact with Atos, I was very impressed. I was also a little bit intimidated when they came back to me, because most teams are simply, oh, well, do you have $400 a month? Then you can join. But Atos was like, well, we don't let everyone join. We want to make sure it's a culture fit for us. We'd like to meet you. We'll interview over Zoom, well, Skype at the time. But there was actually a process, and they cared about who you were rather than just the dollar amount coming back to them, which very much impressed me. So we ended up deciding that we were a good fit for each other. So we affiliated with Atos and Andre Galvao, and it's been really good ever since. Like, not only do myself and the club get access to all these world champions coming through Canberra, which is something that hadn't really happened before. Canberra's not a convenient flight between Sydney and Melbourne.
Yeah.
So a lot of the big names tend to bypass us. But now we're getting Andre Galvao and JT Torres and Josh Hinger coming through just as a part of their Australian tour. And if ever I have a problem, I can literally just reach out online and chat directly to one of them. I don't have to email intermediary or so. It's a very close-knit environment, which I really appreciate. And obviously I'm very, very impressed with the skill level they bring out.
No, hands down, they're definitely one of the top clubs in the world at the moment. So yeah, are you the only Atos affiliated gym in Australia, or?
I think there are 2, maybe 3 others now. I'd have to check. Yeah. But no, there's Atos Brisbane under Antonio Mota. I think there's another one in Townsville. And I'm sorry, I don't know the instructor for that if you're watching. Apologies. And Full Metal Jiu-Jitsu used to be associated with Atos, but they've kept their affiliation with Art of Jiu-Jitsu, the Mendes brothers, when they got spun off separately.
All right.
Jugs, we've had him on the podcast before as well.
Yeah, Justin D.
Yeah, Jugs.
Yeah, he's a good man.
Yeah.
What's your relationship with Andre Galvao like? Like, what's a day in the life of you, Ben, talking to Andre? Is it just a hey, brother?
I mean, I've only had the chance to go over and train in San Diego once myself. Yeah. But it's fantastic. He genuinely has a lot of time for all of his students. He's in there coaching the classes, helping people out. We met him for dinner while we were over there, which was really nice. And it wasn't like he had someone on the side reminding them of who everyone's name was. He just knew who everyone was, which was fantastic. Right. And yeah, it's just great to be able to hang out and chat. And when he comes to Canberra and visits, we're able to hang out and catch up and train together. It's just, very larger than life, smiling man with fantastic jiu-jitsu. Rolling him's like rolling an empty jacket. Whatever you do just suddenly goes his way.
Wow.
Like you feel like you're executing on something. It's like it disappears and he moves around you and you're not where you wanted to be.
For any listeners who don't know who Andre Galvao is, I'll just quickly share my screen. And
come on, no one listening to this podcast surely doesn't know that. I mean, I think they don't know some people, but hello.
Can you see my screen? Do you see the man? All right.
Yeah.
He's an absolute weapon. Jesus. Yeah.
So
to have a line of defense to him. Yeah. I mean, a line of communication. That's great.
And he's been going forever as well. He's
very good, prolific competitor for a very long time.
Absolutely. Yeah. What's what do you guys get, like, competition style advice from a gym that's, you know, got a lineage of such high level competitors? Is there a conversation for competition, or is everybody just trying to keep improving their jiu-jitsu?
How do we interact? Like, can we approach them, or is it
their mindset training, for example? Does anyone think about mindset in these sorts of environments and have secrets and?
Like the mindset question has to be the single most common question asked at any seminar we've hosted for Andre or Josh here or J10. Really? It's always first question out of the gate.
Wow.
And they're always very honest and answer as carefully and as well as they can. It's one of those things that as a coach I find a little frustrating, because that kind of mindset's always got to be personal. Like, optimal mindset for you is not necessarily being optimal mindset for the person standing next to you.
True.
And trying to just imitate Andre's preparation and mindset for a tournament isn't necessarily going to help you out. In fact, it can put people back.
Absolutely. It makes sense. Yeah.
And Ben, tell us about the scene in Canberra. So, as I said, we haven't actually had anyone previously on from there before. So is it big? Is it relatively small? Do all clubs kind of know each other? What's the vibe?
It's getting bigger and bigger. There's actually a decent number of clubs now. From where we started with just a single club years and years ago, there are quite a number of clubs these days. Everyone does kind of know each other. That's jiu-jitsu for you, I think. And it's also Canberra for you. So the two combined do strongly link up. But there's us. There's a Chris Houter affiliate. There's a couple of independent gyms. The Grappling Brothers these days. Shahar, I don't know if you met Shahar. He trained briefly at Absolute after moving down from Sydney. Well-known and technical Australian black belt out of SPMA originally. Moved into Canberra recently and opened up a studio in North Canberra. So there's a large collection of jiu-jitsu built around. And we're also fortunate because we have the Australian Institute of Sport here. It means we have access to some very high-level wrestlers and judoka around as well.
That's a little extra, arrow in the quiver, isn't it? That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great having like Commonwealth Games or Olympians in some cases training nearby. And everyone's very friendly and gets along pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, is this your gym? Yeah, I've heard great things about it.
This is the gym in San Diego.
This is okay. I was like, wow, I was thinking, wow, this is a great Canberra gym here.
What's your website?
It'll be Elements Fitness ACT.
Elements Fitness.
You can see we don't do
ACT.com.au.
Ben, sorry.
That gym in San Diego.
Research.
Or wherever you said it was. All right. We got some photos up here.
Yeah, you've got a pretty strong women's team as well, Ben, because I've met quite a few of your female teammates. What do you think's the secret there? Like, do you think it's just overall the culture that then bleeds through to the females, or what do you put it down to?
I think that culture definitely helps, but again, it was another thing we sort of deliberately set out to do. We felt that women were underrepresented in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's exactly the kind of martial art that everyone should benefit from, regardless of gender or physicality. So we set out to create a environment and an approach to training women that was both giving women a chance to feel comfortable in a new stressful environment that many people just aren't familiar with, like body-to-body contact, rolling around with sweaty men. It's not a great starting point if you've never done anything like that before. But at the same time, we wanted to create something where these women were being genuinely upskilled. We've seen a few examples of women's classes that were borderline creches. They were never designed to help people get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Was just something where people felt a bit more comfortable, but they weren't being taught properly either.
Yeah,
we wanted to create something that was real for everyone, but had a a way of getting in that was just a bit more comfortable. So you could get familiar with that kind of close contact in a way that was just a bit nicer than you might otherwise experience.
Yeah, it's such an interesting line. I mean, I really don't know where the line is here. And it's kind of a controversial topic, but like lately I'm observing women in our gym, they don't want to be treated differently at all. They're offended. They're offended if like I think women's jiu-jitsu is kind of moving in the direction, especially once they've gotten going, you know what I mean, and they've broken through any of the, and this is for lots of humans, this is males and females, but once they break through that level of comfortability, then obviously any discrimination or prejudice is just a bad move, right? So it's like, if it's finding that, it's like getting the momentum, creating a very safe space just momentarily, and then normal jiu-jitsu for everybody, I think is the key. But yeah, I've looked around lately and just seen some women being pissed off because some of the men are actually kind of babying them a bit, and they definitely don't want that,
No, and it's not fair on anyone. Like, that's not why anyone trains in jiu-jitsu, to be babied or coddled along. It's there for your development.
If I could interject, basically as a female, it is a real skill to roll with females. I think it's a real balance between being like a dead fish and going balls to the wall. Like, there's got to be somewhere in between. So what you almost have to do, I think, is try and take strength out of the equation, which is difficult, especially when you're a beginner and you don't feel that you have a lot of technique. It is really hard to pull back that strength. But it is a real skill, and it's a blessing as a female when you find a training partner as a male training partner that can actually do that for you, that can give you the technique without the strength. Because unfortunately, as you know, 65 kilo male will be much stronger than a 65 kilo female. Whatever you want to say about biology, it's the way it is. So you've got to try and take that strength out of the equation. So I think having a strong technical foundation helps a lot to being able to roll with females. So it sounds like that's what you've got, Ben, at your club. Like, very much the foundation is based on technique.
Yes, martial arts training should make you stronger and fitter, but you shouldn't have to be strong and fit to start doing martial arts. And when you're training, you should be training for someone who's stronger than you. So really, there's no conditions in which using strength work, because if you're stronger than your opponent and you use strength, well, you're missing out on training your technique. And if your opponent's stronger than you and you use strength, well, you're not going to win that no matter what. And so, you should be training all the time to try and take strength out of the equation. And the people who are best at it are definitely excellent training partners for women coming out. So they're just, it's a fair contest of technique rather than
it's a tough one, though, because
people.
It involves taking your ego out of the equation, especially when, as a lesser experienced or maybe not quite as technical guy then has partnered with a female that's a little bit more technical. For them to be able to get to that level of technique, suddenly they've got to up the strength, or they've got to accept the fact that, my ego is going to have to get crushed here because I'm going to lose to a female, which maybe they don't want to do. So I think the more females that are on the mats at a club, generally the less likely that is to happen, because it just becomes females become like normal training partners, they're just another body, which is a difficult thing to do when you're just not brought up that way. I think, as much as I want to say women's empowerment and all of that, the reality is that most men, I think, are brought up to treat women a little bit differently in a fight sport situation or a combat situation. So it's a bit tricky.
What I'm thinking right now is that, like, it's one thing to train the women, right, in how to be introduced to the sport, but I think men should also be trained in how to match and mirror strength. Like, if you match and mirror strength, then it takes it out of the equation, like you're saying, Ben. And then all of a sudden you've got a skill versus skill scenario, and I don't think, like, coaches might say to men, go easy, with someone who's smaller than you, but go easy isn't actually what I see as the right advice. it's use only skill, is probably better advice than go easy, because go easy implies don't even use skill or something. I don't know what that means. So that's a very interesting conversation we're having here today, guys.
I mean, a lot of it comes down like training is training. It's not fighting. Who cares if you lose?
Yeah.
Like I know it's easy to say that, and people's egos will always get involved in some fashion. But the more you can kind of just view training as a chance to get better, it doesn't matter who you tap to. Like I'll tap to a white belt, like especially if I'm trying out something new.
Yeah.
Put myself in a vulnerable position. I mean, like this is something that people in general have to get more comfortable with. Yeah. Across the board. It's just a brown belt isn't necessarily going to beat every purple belt. And a purple belt isn't necessarily going to beat every blue belt. And if you're really training to improve, a man isn't necessarily going to be better than a woman. Why would they be? Right. And the more people can kind of put things like that aside, the better they and the better the club in general is going to be. But it's still difficult. Like our era had no leg locks coming up, so we're sort of on the tail end of that. So a lot of my brown and purple belts and blue belts are very, very accomplished leg lockers, and they've had a lot more exposure to it than I have. So there's a lot of time where if I'll enter a leg entanglement, that's really opening up the chance that I'm going to lose far greater than doing any other entanglement. But that's going to help me get better at the leg locking game, better than anything else could possibly do.
So losing,
losing, getting in there and finding out.
Absolutely, I agree. Yeah.
And Ben, do you split your classes kind of evenly 50-50 between gi and no gi, or is it more of a no gi club, or what would you say?
It's normally almost exactly a 50-50 split. At the moment, we have 3 dedicated competition training classes a week. At the moment, all 3 are no gi because we have a decent number of people all doing ADCC trials in June. Yep. So while they're preparing for that, we've turned it into like a mini specific training camp. So they're all working under ADCC rule sets and strategies and no gi. But once that trial is complete, we'll be switching back to almost a totally 50-50 split.
Anton, I've just had an idea. I mean, we've had that many guests on recently talking about these ADCC trials. You and I should live stream our podcast from there, and we could commentate some of the event. I hope they put a stream on for these trials, because nearly every guest we've had on has been talking about it for the past couple of months now.
Bring everything together. I'd love to do that for sure.
Yeah. So how has their training been, Ben? The guys, how many are you sending over? Do you know?
It's a little fewer now. We had there was a COVID outbreak in Canberra at the beginning of the year. For the Omicron cycle, that caused a few more people sort of have to cycle out from concerns about family or work, which is perfectly understandable. But we've still got, I think, 5 or 6 competitors heading across. And the training has been largely personalized around what they're attempting to achieve. So whether or not they're planning to come out and play a leg locking game or more of a wrestle based game, because it's dependent on person to person, weight class to weight class, really.
Yeah, there's some huge divisions. There's so many people that I know of that are talking about it. And even if you look on Smooth Comp, you can see the numbers are already right up there. I think some of the divisions have got heaps of people in there. So no, it'll be great. And let's hope, we get another good ADCC when it happens. We're nearly out of time, Ben. Did you have any final words or any parting
thank you both for having me on, and I hope that was entertaining enough for everyone there.
You were great, man. You're absolutely great. You opened up a really interesting set of conversations, so thank you so much.
Oh, it'd be fantastic to come on. If you're ever looking for someone from Canberra again, I'm happy to jump on once more.
Right.
But yeah, it was really nice fun chatting with you both.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we'll have this podcast out. We've got a couple in the can at the moment, but we will have this out probably in a couple of weeks. So if you could share it with your networks, that would be awesome to help grow our audience. We have a little fan base now, and I think it's getting bigger and bigger. So we'd love to have some Canberrians listening as well. Is that what you call it?
Canberrans. Ken Burns, yeah. Thank you.
Awesome.
No, apologies it's taken this long to get someone from Canberra onto the show, but yeah, I guess we started this podcast initially as a kind of a way to connect with the community in primarily Melbourne when we were locked down through most of 2020. So now it's expanded across the whole country, and yeah, we look forward to. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, Ben. Take care, my friend.
Thank you
both very
much.
much. Take care.
All right.
See ya. Bye.
Yeah.